Known to the world as the King of Hollywood, Clark Gable was the definitive leading man of his era. For over 3 decades, he embodied a rugged, masculine charm that made him one of the most popular and enduring stars in cinema history. His charismatic, often cynical, on-screen persona was perfectly captured in his Academy Award-winning role in It Happened One Night, and, most iconically, as the dashing Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. He was the ultimate box office attraction, a symbol of American manhood whose smile and swagger were legendary. His famous line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," remains one of the most famous in film history. Gable was a heavy smoker and drinker for most of his life. In early November of 1960, shortly after completing his physically demanding final film, The Misfits, he suffered a severe heart attack. He seemed to be recovering well in the hospital, but 10 days later, on November 16, 1960, he suffered a fatal second heart attack. He was 59 years old. His death was a shock to the public, who saw him as an indestructible figure, and it marked the end of an era for classic Hollywood. Clark Gable is interred at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, within the Sanctuary of Trust in the Great Mausoleum. His final resting place is particularly poignant because he is not alone. He was laid to rest directly beside his third wife, actress Carole Lombard, who was the great love of his life. Lombard had died tragically in a plane crash in 1942 while returning from a war bond tour. Though Gable remarried twice more, his wish was always to be buried with her. His simple crypt plaque lies next to hers, a final, romantic tribute that reunited the King of Hollywood with his queen. Spencer Tracy was one of the most respected and naturalistic actors of the Golden Age. He was a performer of immense subtlety and integrity, known for his ability to disappear completely into a role. He was not a flashy movie star but a true actor's actor, winning back-to-back Academy Awards for Best Actor for Captains, Courageous and Boys Town. He starred in 9 films with his longtime partner, Audrey Hepburn, creating one of the most legendary on-screen and off-screen pairings in Hollywood history. His understated power and inherent decency made him a beloved figure, a rock of authenticity in an industry built on artifice. Tracy suffered from poor health for many years, battling heart disease, diabetes, and the effects of lifelong heavy drinking. He completed his final film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, alongside Hepburn, in the spring of 1967, though he was so ill the production could not get him insured. Just 17 days after filming his last scene, on June 10, 1967, he died of a heart attack at his home in Beverly Hills. He was 67 years old. Audrey Hepburn, who found him, never watched the completed film, saying the memories of his final performance were too painful. Out of respect for Tracy's estranged wife and family, Audrey Hepburn did not attend his funeral. Spencer Tracy was buried at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. His grave is located in a special, private section of the cemetery called the Court of Remembrance. It is a simple, ground-level bronze plaque set in the grass, bearing his name and dates. The inscription on his marker reads, "A testimonial to a beloved actor from his fans throughout the world. It is a humble and dignified final resting place for a man who eschewed the trappings of stardom in favor of the quiet dignity of his craft." Gary Cooper was the quintessential American hero on screen. With his tall, laconic presence and understated acting style, he embodied integrity, honor, and quiet strength. He was the strong, silent type that audiences adored in films like Mr. Deeds Goes to Town and Sergeant York. He won 2 Academy Awards for Best Actor, the second for his iconic role as the principled lawman Will Kane in High Noon, a character that perfectly reflected his own screen persona. For decades, he was the image of American decency and courage, a man who always stood up for what was right. Cooper was diagnosed with prostate cancer, which soon spread to his colon and bones. He kept his illness private for as long as he could, but his failing health became apparent when his close friend James Stewart accepted an honorary Oscar on his behalf in April of 1961. Breaking down in tears during the speech, the public then learned the gravity of his condition. Just over a month later, on May 13, 1961, 6 days after his 60th birthday, Gary Cooper passed away at his home in Hollywood. Initially, Gary Cooper was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City, California. However, after his widow Veronica remarried and moved to New York, she had his body exhumed in 1974 to be closer to her. Gary Cooper's final resting place is now the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary Cemetery in Southampton, New York. His grave is marked by a massive 3-ton pink granite boulder, a fittingly rugged and natural monument for the man who embodied the American spirit. It is a unique and powerful marker, set in a quiet, peaceful churchyard, a continent away from the Hollywood where he became a legend. John Wayne, known as the Duke, was more than a movie star. He was an American institution. For over 3 decades, he was one of the biggest box office draws in the world. Starring in more than 170 films, he defined the archetype of the rugged, individualistic American hero, primarily in westerns and war movies. With his iconic walk, distinctive voice, and imposing screen presence, he represented a vision of American strength and patriotism in films like The Searchers, and his Oscar-winning role in True Grit. To his fans, he was the embodiment of the American frontier spirit. A heavy smoker for decades, Wayne was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1964 and had his entire left lung removed. He survived and was declared cancer-free. However, 15 years later, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. John Wayne passed away from the disease on June 11, 1979 at the age of 72. His death was mourned by the nation as the loss of a true American icon, a figure who seemed as indestructible as the heroes he portrayed on screen for years. John Wayne's grave was left unmarked to prevent it from being desecrated by vandals or overwhelmed by tourists. He was buried at the Pacific View Memorial Park in Corona del Mar, California, a beautiful cemetery overlooking the Pacific Ocean nearly 20 years after his death. In 1998, his family finally placed a bronze plaque on his grave. The plaque features an image of Wayne on horseback and a quote he requested from a controversial 1971 interview: "Tomorrow is the most important thing in life. Comes into us at midnight very clean. It's perfect when it arrives and it puts itself in our hands. It hopes we've learned something from yesterday." James Jimmy Stewart was one of Hollywood's most beloved and versatile stars, known for his distinctive drawl and his portrayal of the decent, everyman hero. He could be a charming romantic lead in comedies like The Philadelphia Story, for which he won an Oscar, or a man pushed to his limits in the dark, complex westerns he made with director Anthony Mann. His most enduring role, however, is as George Bailey in the timeless classic It's a Wonderful Life. A decorated war hero who flew combat missions in World War II, Stewart brought a fundamental integrity and vulnerability to every role, making him a true American icon. Stewart was deeply devoted to his wife of 45 years, Gloria, and was reportedly heartbroken after her death in 19. His health began to decline steadily afterward. In 1996, he had a pacemaker installed but chose not to have the battery replaced when it expired the following year. In late June of 1997, a blood clot formed in his leg, leading to a pulmonary embolism. On July 2, 1997, James Stewart passed away at his home in Beverly Hills. His last words, spoken to his family, were reportedly, "I'm going to be with Gloria now." James Stewart was laid to rest in his family's plot at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. Unlike many stars buried at Forest Lawn, his grave is not in a mausoleum but in an outdoor section of the cemetery, beneath a large tree. It is a simple, dignified, and understated grave marker. A flat bronze plaque that bears his name, his dates, and the names of his wife and other family members. The simplicity of the site reflects the man himself, a major Hollywood superstar who never lost the humble, down-to-earth quality that made him so beloved by audiences around the world. Asterisk. Humphrey Bogart was the quintessential tough guy of the Golden Age, an actor who created the archetype of the cynical, world-weary, and initially typecast as a gangster. He rose to superstardom in the 1940s with legendary roles as Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon and, most famously, as the brooding Rick Blaine in Casablanca. With a cigarette dangling from his lips and a trench coat on his back, he was the embodiment of cool. He won his only Academy Award for The African Queen, proving his versatility. Bogart's unique persona, hard-boiled exterior protecting a noble heart, made him one of the greatest and most enduring icons of cinema. A lifelong heavy smoker and drinker, Bogart was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in 1956. He underwent a lengthy and difficult surgery to remove his esophagus and to lymph nodes, but the cancer had already spread. He faced his illness with characteristic stoicism, but his health declined rapidly over the next year. On January 14, 1957, Humphrey Bogart passed away at his home in Los Angeles. He was only 57 years old. His death was a profound loss for Hollywood, which had lost one of its most defining and original stars. Following his funeral, Humphrey Bogart was cremated. His ashes were interred at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. In the Garden of Memory Columbarium, an outdoor courtyard filled with cremation niches. His niche is sealed with a small bronze plaque bearing his name and dates. His wife, Lauren Bacall, placed a small gold whistle inside the niche with his ashes, a touching tribute to their first film together, To Have and Have Not, in which her character famously tells his "You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow." Cary Grant was the epitome of wit, charm, and sophistication. For decades, he was Hollywood's definitive leading man, equally at home in screwball comedies like Bringing Up Baby and suspenseful thrillers like Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. With his transatlantic accent, impeccable style, and athletic grace, he projected an image of timeless elegance and effortless cool. He was handsome, funny, and debonair, a combination that made him one of the most popular stars of all time. He never won a competitive Oscar, but his body of work and his enduring appeal have made him a cinematic immortal. Grant retired from acting in 1966 at the age of 62. At the peak of his popularity, to focus on raising his daughter, he spent his later years in business and touring the country with his one-man show, A Conversation with Cary Grant. It was during this tour that his health failed. On the afternoon of November 29, 1986, while preparing for a performance in Davenport, Iowa, he suffered a massive stroke. He died later that evening at a local hospital at the age of 80-2. In his will, Cary Grant made his wishes for his final arrangements explicitly clear. There was to be no funeral. A notoriously private man who disliked ceremony, he wanted to avoid the spectacle of a Hollywood memorial. In accordance with his wishes, his body was transported back to California, and he was cremated without any service. His ashes were given to his wife, Barbara Harris, and his daughter, Jennifer. It is believed that his ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean, though the family has never publicly confirmed the exact location. It was a perfectly private and understated exit for the most elegant star in Hollywood history. Elizabeth Taylor was one of the last great stars of the classic Hollywood studio system. Famed for her breathtaking violet eyes and stunning beauty, she was a child star who successfully transitioned into a celebrated adult actress of incredible range and power. She won 2 Academy Awards for Best Actress for Butterfield 8, and most notably for her raw and transformative performance in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Her tumultuous personal life, particularly her 8 marriages, actor Richard Burton, made her a constant subject of media fascination. She was a true icon, a brilliant actress, a global celebrity, and later in life, a tireless humanitarian and AIDS activist. Taylor struggled with numerous health problems for decades. In 2004, she was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, a condition she battled for many years. In February of 2011, she was admitted to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles for treatment. She passed away there from the condition on March 23, 2011, at the age of 79. Even in death, she maintained her famous sense of humor. Per her instructions, her funeral was delayed by 15 minutes, with a representative announcing she even wanted to be late for her own funeral. Elizabeth Taylor was laid to rest at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, within the Great Mausoleum. The private Jewish ceremony was held just a day after her death. Her ornate sarcophagus is located in the same sanctuary that holds her close friend, Michael Jackson. Her grave is marked by a magnificent life-size marble statue of an angel, a monument that is both grand and elegant. It is a fittingly beautiful and dramatic final resting place for a woman who is a legend of Hollywood glamour, talent, and resilience. Judy Garland was a performer of singular, once-in-a-generation talent. With a voice that could break your heart and fill you with joy, she became a superstar at a young age, forever immortalized as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She was a tremendous musical and dramatic talent, earning Oscar nominations for her roles in A Star is Born and Judgment at Nuremberg. Yet her incredible talent was shadowed by a life of intense personal struggle, including battles with addiction, financial instability, and mental health issues, all stemming from the immense pressures of her early fame in the studio system. Her lifelong struggles with addiction, particularly to barbiturates, took a severe toll on her health. On June 22, 1969, she was found dead in the bathroom of her rented London home by her 5th husband. The cause of death was determined to be an accidental overdose of sleeping pills. She was only 47 years old. Her death was a tragic, but not entirely unexpected, end to a life lived in the brightest of spotlights and the darkest of shadows initially. Judy Garland was interred in a mausoleum crypt at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. For decades, fans made the pilgrimage there. However, her children felt that the space was inadequate for her legacy and for her family to one day be buried with her. In 2017, nearly 50 years after her death, her remains were moved across the country to Los Angeles. Her final resting place is now a beautiful private mausoleum in the Judy Garland Pavilion at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. The pavilion is open to the public, a grand and fitting tribute in the heart of the city where she became a star, ensuring her legacy continues to shine brightly. Audrey Hepburn was the embodiment of elegance, grace, and charm. With her gamine figure, doe eyes, and radiant smile, she presented a new and attainable standard of beauty that stood in contrast to the bombshells of the era. She became an international icon in films like Roman Holiday, for which she won an Academy Award, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and My Fair Lady. But her true legacy extends beyond her film career. After largely retiring from acting, she dedicated her life to humanitarian work, serving as a goodwill ambassador for UNICEF and traveling the world to raise awareness for children in need. In late 1992, after returning from a UNICEF mission to Somalia, Hepburn began experiencing severe abdominal pain. Doctors discovered a rare form of abdominal cancer. She underwent surgery, but the cancer was too advanced to be fully removed. Knowing she had only a short time left, she chose to spend her final days at her beloved home in Switzerland. On January 20, 1993, Audrey Hepburn passed away peacefully in her sleep at her home in Talaquinas. She was 63 years old, reflecting the quiet, private life she had built for herself away from the glamour of Hollywood. Audrey Hepburn was buried in a small, local ceremony in the Talaquinas Cemetery, in the Swiss village where she had lived for 3 decades. Her grave is remarkably simple and modest. It is a small plot of earth, marked by a simple, unadorned wooden cross bearing her name and dates. The grave is always covered in fresh flowers, particularly pansies and primroses, left by a constant stream of admirers from around the world. Its humble beauty is a poignant testament to the woman who valued kindness and simplicity above all else. Grace Kelly lived a true fairy tale. She was the epitome of cool, blonde elegance and became one of Hollywood's biggest stars in just a few short years. She was a favorite of director Alfred Hitchcock, starring in his classics Rear Window and To Catch a Thief. And she won an Academy Award for her performance in The Country Girl. At the absolute height of her fame and career in she retired from acting at the age of 26 to marry Prince Rainier III of Monaco, trading her title as Hollywood royalty for that of a real-life princess, Her Serene Highness Princess Grace of Monaco. Her fairy tale life came to a shocking and tragic end. On September 13, 1982, while driving with her daughter Stephanie on the winding roads of Monaco, Princess Grace suffered a stroke. She lost control of the car, which plunged down a mountainside. She was pulled from the wreckage alive but had sustained catastrophic brain injuries and never regained consciousness. She died the following day, on September 14, 1982, after being taken off life support. She was only 52 years old. Her death was an international tragedy, mourned by both Hollywood and the royal houses of Europe. Following a grand funeral attended by royalty and celebrities from around the world, Princess Grace was laid to rest in the Grimaldi family vault in the apse of the St. Nicholas Cathedral, the main cathedral of Monaco where she and Prince Rainier were married. Her tomb is a simple white marble slab on the floor, inscribed with her name in Latin Gratia Patricia, and her dates. She lies beside her husband, Prince Rainier, who was buried next to her following his death in 2005. It is a regal and sacred final resting place for the movie star who became a princess. James Dean became a legend with just 3 films: East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant. In those roles, he created the enduring archetype of the misunderstood, tormented and rebellious teenager. His raw, emotionally intense acting style was revolutionary for its time, and his brooding vulnerability captured the angst of a generation. He was the epitome of cool, a cultural icon who represented a new kind of youthful defiance. He was nominated for 2 posthumous Academy Awards, a testament to his immense and immediate impact on the world of cinema. Dean had a passion for auto racing, a dangerous hobby that would lead to his death on September 30, 1955, while driving his new Porsche 550 Spider, which he had nicknamed Little Bastard, to a race in Salinas, California. He was involved in a head-on collision with another car. James Dean, just 24 years old, was killed almost instantly. His sudden and violent death at the dawn of his fame cemented his status as a tragic hero. Forever frozen in time as a symbol of youthful rebellion, James Dean was brought back to his hometown of Fairmount, Indiana for his funeral. He was buried in the Park Cemetery, in his family's plot. His grave is marked by a simple but elegant headstone made of polished rose granite. The stone bears his name, his dates, and the inscription, "His life was short." The grave has become a major pilgrimage site for fans from all over the world. It is constantly adorned with flowers, cigarettes, and other mementos. The headstone is famously covered in lipstick kisses and has been chipped away over the years by fans desperate for a souvenir, a testament to the intense and enduring cult of personality that surrounds the ultimate rebel without a cause. Marilyn Monroe remains the ultimate Hollywood icon, the definitive symbol of glamour, stardom, and tragedy. With her bombshell figure, platinum blonde hair, and breathy voice, she became the biggest star of the 1950s. In films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and Some Like It Hot, but beneath the dazzling surface was a sensitive and intelligent woman who longed to be taken seriously as an actress. She was a magnetic, luminous screen presence, but her life was plagued by insecurity, troubled relationships, and a desperate search for love and stability. The circumstances of her death have become the stuff of legend and conspiracy theory. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her bed at her home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. She was 36 years old. The official cause of death was ruled a probable suicide due to an overdose of barbiturates. Her sudden death shocked the world and created an enduring mythos around her final days, forever preserving her as a tragic and beautiful icon. Marilyn Monroe was buried at the Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Her crypt is in the Corridor of Memories mausoleum and is marked by a simple pinkish marble plaque with her name and dates. It is one of the most visited graves in the world. For 20 years after her death, her ex-husband Joe DiMaggio had red roses delivered to her crypt 3 times a week. The plaque is famously stained by the lipstick kisses left by countless adoring fans. Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, who featured her on the cover of his first issue, famously bought the crypt directly next to hers, ensuring its place beside the ultimate symbol of Hollywood allure. Sir Charles Spencer Chaplin, known to the world as Charlie Chaplin, was arguably the most important figure in the history of the film industry. As an actor, director, composer, and producer, he was a true cinematic auteur. His iconic character, the Tramp, a lovable vagrant with a toothbrush mustache, bowler hat, and cane, became a global symbol of comedy and pathos. Through silent masterpieces like The Gold Rush, City Lights, and Modern Times, he transcended language and culture, becoming the first and perhaps greatest international movie star. He was a comedic genius whose influence is still felt in filmmaking today. After being accused of communist sympathies during the McCarthy era, Chaplin left the United States in 1952 and settled in the village of Coursier-sur-Vevey, Switzerland, overlooking Lake Geneva. He spent the last 25 years of his life there with his wife Una and their children. On Christmas morning 1977, Charlie Chaplin died peacefully in his sleep from a stroke. He was 88 years old. He was buried in the local cemetery in Coursier-sur-Vevey. However, the story took a bizarre turn 3 months later. In March of 1978, when 2 men stole his coffin and held it for ransom, the plot failed, and the police recovered the coffin 11 weeks later, buried in a field in a nearby village, to prevent any future theft attempts. Charlie Chaplin was reinterred in his original grave plot, but this time the grave was encased in a vault of reinforced concrete. He rests there today, next to his wife Una, under a simple stone cross in a peaceful Swiss cemetery, a secure and quiet final resting place for the man who brought laughter to the entire world.